Welcome to GBIRL, the podcast looking at the real business world of esports, gaming, and streaming with the people and personalities behind it all. Here is your host, Bill the Conqueror.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Your content is your business, and the way you make your content is very important because the faster you can churn out the content, the faster you can get noticed, the faster you can, monetize that content. And so I know the way that I make content. I have a workflow that I have refined. Works for me, gets my stuff out the door in the fashion that I want to get it out. But I'm always interested to hear about how other creators do it. Everybody has their style, everybody has their vibe, and everybody makes content for different reasons. I think that good content solves a problem. And whether that problem is entertainment, whether that problem is teaching, whether that problem is trying to bring an issue to light, whether that problem could be just, I want to vent. This is my venting content. I'm going to vent and then I'm going to get it out and that's it. So good content solves a problem. And so I wanted to get a vibe on what the person you see on the screen right there, the fabulous, lovely individual that you see on the screen right there, she recently put out a series about making content and how to make content, why you make content, stuff you learn from it. So I had the fabulous Canadian queen, Mecca Eyre. She is with me today. And I'm fortunate because most of the time, people ghost me and I never hear from them again. But you know what? I thought back about a month and a half ago, you were going to ghost me, Mecca, but you didn't. You came back, didn't you?
I knew you were going to mention that. No. It's like everyone in my city decided this was when the industries were going to start back and work. And I'd been out of work for 2 years. Right. And it was just such a bizarre time that we connected. And I'm like, I promise you, I'm not ignoring you. I was like, I don't know. As you noticed, I was releasing an episode a week of my content. Yes. And then I started my job and I'm like, I can do it. But I'm still arrogant in my 20s almost. So that didn't happen. I'm turning 30 in December though. So I'm almost done.
Whoa.
I'm so ready to be done with this decade. You don't even
All right, so before we get into the deeper conversation, give me a little vibe on who you are, how you got started, how you got connected with the J-Man and Hater and T. That's a story. I'm sure that's a story in of itself, but go ahead.
Oh, it's actually such a good story. Well, I think it's crazy because you don't understand. So I went into this and I had no idea how vast. This sounds so stupid because I'm a child of the 90s. I had 3Web, everything. I'd dial up. But I'd been working for 10 years in Toronto in the film industry. So by that, I mean 16, 17-hour days. I'd go home and sleep. And then I'd have a month off where I'd just be catching up with people in real life. So I completely missed the decade of gaming that was 2009 to when I moved home in 2017. So whatever that was.
Okay.
It's almost 10 years. Almost 10 years I moved away. So I was like completely off of video games and I was just like a working professional in Toronto. So anyway, so basically I wrote this answer out because it's a little long-winded. Because I've known all of them for almost 2 years. Like T and I have been friends. This is our third pumpkin spice latte season together. So it's a big deal.
Okay, hold up. If you reference the passage of time by pumpkin
spice latte.
Okay, I'm gonna like have to refrain myself from making horrible comments. Go ahead.
It's the best thing in the world, and you're gonna change your mind one day.
Okay. All right. Anyway.
Okay, so I'm gonna take you to 2019. So
okay.
I'd been friends. When I joined the Fundament, I'd been friends with Hater, T, and J for about a year at that point.
Right.
So we'd been in the same circle of Instagram friends. And it feels so weird because Jay and I have talked about this. We're like, it's so weird now where we wouldn't really meet people on Instagram anymore. But all of us were kind of in that mindset of like we're all in the same age group. We're all within three or 4 years of each other. And I think Hater's the oldest. Hater and T are the same age. And
yep, they are.
Yeah. And so we met on Instagram. And T and I met in August of 2019. I wrote that down. And we're both really new to streaming, so we're kind of trying to make friends and be like, what is Twitch and everything? And like, it sounds really dumb because Justin TV had been around for so long at that point. Um, and then through that, like T and I were in each other's streams, we were modding for each other. We had each other on auto host. Like I still remember the DM she sent me where she's like, hey, can I host you? I have no one to host, and like you're really my only friend. And I was like, yeah, no, I was gonna ask you the same thing.
Okay.
So then
All right.
through that she met she met Jay and Hater,
Right.
and they were in all of our streams and everything. And then Dizzy and Bona came along. I met Bona on Xbox actually through Frankie, through
Okay.
some other friends when we were out playing
Okay.
on Xbox. Bona and I used to play on console together.
Okay.
So through like a really bizarre turn of events, like we all kind of came together,
Mm-hmm.
but I was in another clan the summer before Beyond Light when that came out. So it was where's my note? Hold on. Uh, so that's when Hero and I had started playing on PC. We were in our clan. We were like, we wanted to change some things up. Like we weren't really vibing the Xbox vibe anymore, and we both had computers that could do gaming and streaming at the same time. So being friends with T, Hater, Jay, and Bona, we were like, hey guys, like, can we join your clan? And like T had always said it was always an open invitation. Like if anything happened, like we had a place with the fundament. But this was back when the Discord only had 100 members in it.
Right.
So like we all had no idea what this would turn into. As all of us grew and as the community grew. And so it's really crazy. It's really wild to be able to witness the growth of a community that has hopefully the capacity to one day make a huge impact on who we play with and how we game.
Very nice. And it's interesting because I just interviewed the J-Man, and your stories line up really.
Do they really?
Well, hold on.
Did you mention Instagram?
He actually did.
Yeah.
So, but I was gonna say your stories line up in a really interesting way. It things just sort of came together. Is it everybody kind of knew everybody at some point, and then not everybody knew everybody. Like J-Man had a friend, and that friend, it just formed this big circle, and y'all just kind of got to know each other, and it sort of happened. It's really interesting how things. It's interesting how things in life sort of gel at the right moment. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and especially the fundamentals started out of COVID, and I saw the clip that you posted.
Right.
And I mean, 2020 just is one speck of time. Like, so if I'm missing timelines, it's because it all blended together. I'm like,
Right.
I don't know when this happened. But I remember the pandemic hit in February. That was I always say the Seraph Tower moment of Destiny, if you remember that, if you were playing a lot. But I call it the Seraph Towers happened right before the world was in a state of emergency.
Yep.
And that was when there was a quest I was working on. I remember that, but I was already at home because of the pandemic. Well, no, I was already home because I was out of work at that moment. I'd been out of work the summer that I met T. I was out of work, and then going into the pandemic, they were all playing together. We were all playing together. Like I don't know if I played with Haterade yet, but I talked to him directly through DMs on Instagram and on Twitter and stuff. So like we all were engaging with each other, but some of us hadn't played yet together. So
Got it.
that's also the difference. That's kind of very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So the fundament comes together. The lighthouse. So the fundament comes together. The lighthouse comes to life.
Yeah.
When did you decide? And obviously this is an offshoot of having a ton of time on your hands. When did you decide I want to make content? Versus
Okay.
versus just like, I'm going to make some YouTube videos, and I might actually stream a little bit. No. I'm talking about, okay, I'm going to actually make content. I'm going to plan it. I'm going to create it. I'm going to edit it. And
Produce it.
And I'm going to do the whole schmear versus somebody who's like, oh, I was playing Xbox and I recorded
I just turned on the stream.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I want to emphasize though is there's nothing wrong with doing that, because
Right.
I know someone
Right.
that was like, I want to be on Twitch because it's going to help my social anxiety. So it's like, if it's a little goal like that,
Yeah.
totally cool, because you're doing it for a purpose. I think what I
Yeah.
disagree with is if you're mindlessly turning it on because you don't know that you need someone to see you. That's where I disagree.
Okay.
And I think that just needs more. People need to see that reason more than just turning it on. Anyway, so I wrote the answer to this and I thought it was really clever. And then, so it doesn't really fit with what you just asked me, but I thought it was a really clever answer where I said, technically, I've been a creator since I was 5 years old. When I told my kindergarten teacher that we were just putting on a play, I didn't give her an option to say no. We just did it.
Okay.
So I wrote that when I was in kindergarten. So I've always kind of been a creator. I've been a producer, an editor. I edited my first film when I was 14. I never finished it, but it's still like a passion project of mine.
Sure.
But for online content creation, so that started like full on executing. I think properly producing started when I was making my first podcast, which was Ask Mecca, which was supposed to be like forget what it was, like a news article I based it off of. It was like someone would write in something that they're dealing with in their life and the person would respond. And it was like, I think it was Dear Abby was where I based it off of. Yeah, Dear Abby was the original concept. And then I based my podcast off of that. That was during the pandemic, so I had a lot of time on my hands. But that involved booking talent, that involved like figuring out my topic. I had Google Forms, I had everything. And so that was like a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And I was learning about modern editing technology because I hadn't edited something of my own since college. So that was like, I graduated college in 2012. So the technology had changed drastically.
Right.
The best part about that is there was a lot of open source software that I could use to make.
Absolutely.
Right. So we didn't have that when I was in college. So everything was like $300, $500. Oh, student discount for the Adobe suite.
Right.
And so I just threw that out because I couldn't afford it. So why would I want to be a creator if I can't even be creative? Right. But now if you have a computer, you can do anything. So, so it was my first podcast, Ask Mecca. But I think I really ran with my more recent YouTube series that has demanded. I've probably spent like, I don't even know, like probably a month from beginning to end consistently out of the 4 months I've been producing it. Cause you have to have life in there. You have to connect with people. You have to do other things. But a month of that 4 months, I've spent solidly editing, producing, writing, booking talent.
Right.
And I think it's really severely underestimated the amount of planning that has to go in to be a full-time content creator and to make quality content. That's the big thing. It's quality.
Yep. And I like that you said that, is because I think we've reached a point with content creation that pretty much everybody does the same sort of thing, whether you're making game clips of you doing something awesome, or you're doing a commentary video or a how-to video or whatever. We've reached a point where production values matter a lot.
I have the curse of experience because I worked in movies and TV for 10 years. So that was a huge middle finger to me to get started.
Yes. And I've learned for myself in my journey that having high production value means you have to invest in the tools. A lot of people don't have the funds, or don't have this will sound weird, don't have the mental strength to say, I'm gonna save up the
$2,000,
$2,000, $500, whatever that amount is, to get a tool that you need to make content. That is a big step. And so so that sort of leads me to the next question. A lot of people fight with this. I fight with it from time to time. It's gotten better as I've created and learned and grown. But the whole concept behind imposter syndrome, where you deal with, it's like, I'm not really a creator. I can't make what this person makes. I'm not this person. It's like, for me, when I started doing a podcast, 90% of it was, I don't know what the hell I'm going to say. I ask somebody if they want to be on a podcast. We talk about it like a general idea. And when I hit, hit record, I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about yet, but I'm just going to hit record and go.
Just go with it.
Just
it's
like
fine.
go. And I mean, so okay, so talk about your own struggle with imposter syndrome.
Because I wrote an answer to this, but I think it's if I say the answer that I wrote, it's a little bit. It's so small from the bigger picture, because I think what makes us human is we struggle and we get down and then we get up. And I think imposter syndrome only strikes you in those moments you're down.
Okay.
And you're not good enough and your self-talk is bad. What has helped my imposter syndrome is having a healthy work-life balance, having a full life, having a dog I love, having my partner that cares about me here,
Yep.
And when I was in my early 20s working in film and TV, I constantly told myself, I'm never going to make a National Geographic documentary. I'm never going to be on CBC or NBC. I'm never going to do this, all this stuff, because I hadn't done anything. I didn't have a full life. I didn't have things that gave me purpose besides my job. I was defined by my job as a coordinator. And I was like, I'm so cool. I live in the city by myself, 3,000 kilometers away from my family. And like, that was it. That was all that I had. I had that identity from college until I finally moved home in 2017. And I feel like by going through the life experience I did, I shame people in their 20s because I shame myself so much. Like, everyone's an asshole. Sorry. When they're in their 20s, I apologize.
That's okay.
But you're learning how to be an adult. You're learning how to human with other humans. And I think that it comes with life experience. So by turning 30 in 2 months, I feel like I've gained a strong maturity, a strong sense of self. And when you reach the end of that hot garbage fire that is your 20s. So right now I know my worth. I know where my time is valued and where it isn't. And I know when something is worth an energy investment. So if you also think about the struggle, the emotional struggle that all artists face over time.
Yeah.
Whether it's Jean-Michel Basquiat or Lady Gaga, you're not an artist if you don't go through imposter syndrome. So if you think about it that way, then you're like, oh, I guess if I'm feeling imposter syndrome, I guess I am a creator.
Okay, good. I like that. So now, give me the moment, and this, I have my own, but give me the moment where you're down. You're like, I hate myself. I hate everything. This sucks. I just spent, hours making this video, and it's the most disgusting pile of garbage I've ever seen. Or better yet, you made a video, put it out, and you're like, this is great. And no one cares. Nobody cares. Or people are like, what pile of hot, messy garbage is this? So you have that point where you're down and you got the imposter syndrome and you're like, I've been doing this for so long. And I mean, in terms of your life, you haven't been doing it like forever, quote unquote, but you feel like I've been struggling so long and I just screw this. I hate this. I freaking hate, there's gotta be a better way. And what was that moment? What was that moment in your head that you flip the switch? You're like, no. I'm gonna get up. I'm gonna learn from this. I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna remake this. I'm gonna do it better this time.
So I guess that's a bit of an answer I can give you, where like I can kind of take you back to 6 months ago to when I was starting production on the YouTube series.
Sure.
I'd been a creator for almost 2 years at that point, where I was on Instagram, on Twitter, on Twitch, and like, when you're working against the Twitch directory, when you're giving everything you're like, okay, so there's a few answers to this, but I was one day averaging 700 likes on an Instagram post, and I was like, oh, that's my new record. That's my new bar. That's the bar I now set for myself of posting and getting engagement, and so any other posts that came after that, none of them got that. So I think there was things that were working with me to make that happen. The timing was perfect, all this stuff. So 6 months ago, I decided that I'm lacking in an area that I have no experience in. I know a lot about creative stuff. I'm great at networking, but the technical side of broadcasting your content to eyes, that was something I was lacking. So I decided to try to figure out how to teach myself the skills that I needed. That's when I found Coursera. I don't know if you know what Coursera is, but it's free for a week, and then you pay $64 a month to have access to like all these courses to get your certification in various things that you can do online. It was like online universities and like, University of Southern California. That's where I was taking my courses. And it was an SEO certification course to understand how the internet works and understand how Google works. Through that, I gained a lot of confidence in a lot of things that I once felt like it was my fault, that things weren't landing and engagement wasn't working.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if you're a creator going into a saturated market, let's use Destiny, for example. Destiny is incredibly oversaturated with things that there's only so many ways you can make a wheel, right?
Yep.
And I feel really bad for the creators now that are getting started. It was hard when I was getting started.
Right.
But if you're working against a monster, that is the Twitch directory, that is the YouTube algorithm, and you don't understand how to speak that language, and you don't understand what is and isn't in your control, then you're going to have imposter syndrome, and it's going to keep you down until you choose to learn how to make things in your control.
Okay. And I like that. Is that you recognized a spot where you're like, okay, I can make the content. How do I get it in front of more eyeballs?
How do I get it in front of people? And that is where SEO training comes in handy.
So when you're dealing with that imposter syndrome, when you're dealing with it internally, and you have that voice in your head, and it's telling you you're not good enough, you're not going to do this, it's never going to work. How much of that was framed with the fact that you had the voice telling you, you're a girl in a man's world. You have a different set of expectations from the guys. You have a different set of rules. You have a different set of barriers.
Yeah.
To talk about that thought process, because for me personally, it's a narrative and there's some truth in there. And I have a hard time figuring out, and that's just because I've never experienced that. And that's not slamming anybody who has, but I've spent a lot of energy figuring out how much of that is people making excuses and how much of that is the truth.
So you're wondering, so your question is like, is someone like, say that someone's giving their all to being a creator and they're just complaining on Twitter about not growing and they're a girl, or they're just specify a little bit more about an example so I can give an appropriate answer.
So for me, I wanted to know for you, how much of that in your head did you feel like this isn't working because I'm female? And how much of it was this isn't working because I don't have the understanding that I should have?
Understood. Okay, I get the question now. So I'll give a little bit of a backstory on you'll never see me really get heated about sexism.
Right.
Like it takes a lot to get me rattled as well. If I'm, one comment might throw me off if it's a really bad day. Like if I'm super vulnerable already and someone says something off the cuff and I'm like, yo, dude. But like,
right.
If you think about, so this might bore some of your viewers, but I'm super into like anthropology and human evolution. So you look at the past 200 years,
Sure.
and there's a book I love. It's called Sex at Dawn, and the main focus of it is talking about polyamory and monogamy. And I am myself a monogamist, but I am fascinated at evolution of humans and connectivity and relationships, and why we are the way we are now. What made the nuclear family a thing? So the beginning of that book talks about ownership of property. And that is where sexism really stems from, because we humans evolved in a tribal mentality, and it was only the 17 and 1800s in the Victorian era that women were owned, women were property.
Right.
And so that's not that long ago in the bigger scheme of things. So the suffragette movement was what, in the early 1900s?
Yep.
And that again isn't that long ago. And you look at what's happening in Afghanistan.
Yep.
And we're very, very privileged in North America. I'm able to be wearing a t-shirt. I can have my hair color as much as I want.
Yep.
And I can show my boobs wherever I want and whatever. Like, I'm not going to, but it's within my right to do so. And if I think about that, and apply it to the world that we're now in gaming, I'm one speck on a much bigger thing, a much bigger issue. So me getting fussed over some dude saying, you're just a girl, you don't know how to use anarchy in a raid. I'm just like, yeah, okay, buddy. Like,
right.
But that just makes me feel like, okay, like that dude clearly he's not someone I will get along with or play with, and he's not worth my time or energy. And it just shows me that, like, I have a big understanding of things where I'm not going to take things personally. So to come back to your full question, the imposter syndrome and feeling like things are out of my control. Things are out of my control. I live in a society where it is male dominated. I worked in the film and TV industry where it was male dominated. I grew up in a family of boys where I was the only girl out of all my cousins. Like, so this isn't a new outfit for me. Like, I know how to be a woman in a man's world. But by my being present in the next 100 years, maybe women will be the top Twitch streamers. I mean, hopefully Twitch isn't around in 100 years. But it's, I just don't let it harsh my mellow, to say it very basically. I think the biggest thing that was working against me was my lack of knowledge about technology. And I don't think that it was working against me at all that I'm a woman. I think at the end of the day, like, a dude's probably not going to like my content, and that's out of my control. He's not my market.
Okay. I really like that answer. I'm probably going to take about a minute and a half of that entire answer, and I'm going to grab it. I'll try to get the best parts, but I'll definitely grab that and put that on Twitter.
You like it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a great answer. It's a really in-depth, well thought out answer to the question that I've always had, because I try to operate from the standpoint of, I will do everything that I can to make whatever I need to have happen, come to fruition. And each person has their own barriers. Each person has their own issues. Each person has their problems that they have to overcome. Everybody's is different. There is a common thread under it all. But everybody deals with things in a different way. And I wanted to, I try to understand the other side of stuff. And so I like the way you framed that in terms of, hey, wasn't too long ago where, we
were property.
We're property. Okay, you're absolutely correct. We're talking what, 200 years maybe?
200 years ago.
About 200 years. Okay, well,
So it's a privilege that I'm able to have this conversation with you without my partner standing right beside me, right? Like, heroes we share the same room right now. He's playing with J-Man right now, but he's not here watching what I'm saying.
Right, and that's, that's a great thing. I honestly had never heard it framed that way. And I'm like, okay.
I love that. Thank you for embracing that perspective. But that's also why I'm not going to get angry at a guy that's clearly really young. His conditioning in a family he was raised in, it's not necessarily his fault, but it's my job to educate him and say, hey, you actually can't say that to me.
Right.
Here's why. Right. And if he's in a state where he understands, where he was genuinely ignorant, I'm more than happy to educate somebody. But if they're showing me signs that they don't understand that what they said was wrong or hurtful, then I'm not going to waste my energy on them, because as I said earlier, I know where my energy is valued.
And that understanding of yourself takes a lot of self-awareness that about 90% of the world never has.
I've had a lot of therapy.
No, I have too. I've had a ton of therapy. Oh, I've sat in rooms and cried my eyeballs out about stuff about things that I look back on and go, why was I crying about that? I don't even understand.
Yeah. But it's because you had to go through that trauma memory and process it. And that's totally reasonable. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Now we're going to get away from that, because that's like some really in-depth stuff that maybe we can talk about it in the GBIRL raw version of all this. But what I want to know most is, I want to walk through your process of creation, from idea to rough draft to you have this idea. You're like, okay, I think I want to do this. Okay, what does it look like? So do you take out a piece of paper and start drawing squares and you write stuff out? Because I know the way I do it. I have an idea, then I'm like, okay, I probably need a script for this. I probably need, I want it to look this way. I want this graphic, and I want some sound here. And for me, it sort of comes together as a picture in my head first. Like, okay, I think I want it to look this way. And then I start writing stuff out. Like, okay, I need this asset. I need this sound. I need this image.
Do you think in lists? Do you have an inner voice in your head?
So I do have an inner voice. I don't think in lists. I write a list to organize. But for me, things come in flashes. Like for me, I might have this sound in my head. Like, okay, I want to do something with this sound, but where does this sound fit? Where does it work? And I just like wander around.
It's like a puzzle piece.
Yes.
You're like, where do you go?
Yeah. I have this piece. I'm like, hey, I have this thing. I want to do something with this idea, and I want it to sound like this. How do I fit these together? How does this fit this? Okay, it doesn't fit yet. How do I get it to fit?
Yeah.
But I know for somebody like yourself, working in the film industry, there's a very structured process to it, right?
Oh yes,
Okay.
It is military.
Yes. So I guess so the fact that you've spent a ton of time in the film industry, and how. So your thought process from idea to actual publishing.
So I'll use my current podcast as an example of that. So
Sure.
I remember when I had the idea, I was just like, I didn't have a job. I was like, whatever, I need something to do. I need content, because I was like, oh my God, like the world's going to come back to itself. You're going to start having to work again. And I wanted, before I returned to work, I wanted to be able to have a routine and a pattern of things this is who I am, because I didn't have anything that I was like, oh, I go and I stream Destiny sometimes on Twitch. That's what I did. So I'm in the fundament, but who was I, right? I wanted to make sure that I left a mark somewhere that I was like, this is who I am, bitch. Sorry, I swore again. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, and I admire Chelsea Handler, and I love strong females on talk shows, and we can really pull on a thread, like there's a certain population of creators and artists that understand emotions, understand how to interview, and journalists too. And I did take a couple journalism courses when I was in broadcasting school, so I understand proper questioning. So anyway, back to the starting of my process. From when I worked in the film industry, there's a thing called a prep schedule, and I fucking hated doing them. They were the bane of my existence. Every single show I worked on, I swear again, I'm sorry. Every single show I worked on had them, and what they did, they broke down the next 30 days of production. So you're in pre-production, and you usually only use them for pre-production, because once you were in production, then you had a different schedule for that. This is supposed to show every single step that you need to do to make sure that production is executed flawlessly.
Right.
I hated them. I did probably 400 of them, and they were 7-page documents, basically formatted like crazy. And lo and behold, when I started my YouTube series, I was like, you know what would really help me right now is making a prep schedule. So I did. And I did dates. I did when I wanted to start recording, possible interviewees, people that I think would fit certain topics.
Right.
And I was like, what are things people are creating right now? What are the platforms? One of my first interviews was with Lexi Kitty, and she is soaring on YouTube and on TikTok. And when I interviewed her YouTube was at 18,000, and I checked a few weeks ago, and it's at 60,000 now. And I was like, oh my God, in that short amount of time, I interviewed her at the beginning of June, and it's September now. Like, it's crazy. And my friend Josh Barracks had the same thing happen to him on TikTok. Like, it was crazy. So I saw those holes in content where I was like, no one's talking to us. No one is interviewing us about our experiences. And as you said earlier, we all go through the same stuff.
Yep.
And what makes us different is how we respond to it. So I do the prep schedule to organize everything into dates. It's dated. It is what I want to accomplish on each date, when production starts, when I want to be finished a certain episode. So it'll be like June 2nd says write episode with Bill the Conqueror on June 2nd.
Right.
And things I want to be writing about. So my episode breakdowns are about 5 pages. I feel really bad when I've sent them to my subjects because I'm just like, here's what I want to review. I give it to them a week in advance because it's a long document that I want them to approve. It is because, but it's thorough. Because what those documents then do is they translate into our recording process, and in the edit, the story, all the questions I ask in that document, the story shows me how it wants to be edited. Because I can't plan for that. I can't plan for when it's content like this. You don't know where it's going to go. The thread of the story. Yeah. Even if it's an interview, there's a common narrative through the whole interview. And then I have when I want it to be done by. And then, so that's why when you and I were talking about this interview, what was so funny is I was not imposter syndroming, but I was literally spiraling out of control because it was like, I have 3 more interviews I have to edit. My prep schedule is all wrong now. Oh my God. And I'm present as a type B, but I'm a type A. So if things aren't organized, I'm just like, oh my God. So I was behind on my own stuff. I vanished from Twitter. If you ever look on Twitter, I'm completely gone for 2 weeks in that timeline because I was like, I don't know how to make coffee at Starbucks anymore. So I mean, that's a really convoluted, messy answer, but that's basically my process. So now I feel much better. I'm back on the ball with my 3 interviews left to edit. That's it.
See, and okay. So your thought process, your creation process is very much influenced by your experience in the film industry because you have, and I don't know if people fully understand how the film industry works. From the day the project starts to the day the project ends, you are spending cash on talent, on equipment, on whatever. Did we
talk about this? Did you work in the industry?
No.
We talked about
No, we did not. But I understand how business works. I understand how creating things work.
Yeah. And how expensive it is to make something.
Exactly. There's a reason why films take hundreds of millions of dollars to make.
Avatar took 20 years.
Right. It took 20. It not only took 20 years to make, but when they started filming, we didn't have the technology to do what they wanted to do. Right.
So he wrote it in 1986, but he wanted the technology to evolve.
Exactly. And so in film, when it comes to shooting a film, you need structure. We have to start here. We have to end here. Why? Because the studio is giving us an X size budget. And if we go over that budget, we're not going to be able to get the film out, and we're going to lose all the money. Right.
That's why you work 16-hour days in the film industry, because you can work a 16-hour day and pay 4 hours of overtime. It's cheaper still than having an entirely additional week of shooting because people want the 8-hour workday. It does not make sense. It's not humane at all. It's not ethical. No. But I don't believe the industry is going to change. That's why I left, to be honest.
And see. And when it comes to creation at that level, yes, it works for one reason. You go as hard as you possibly can until the project is done, and then you take the same amount of time off.
To rest.
To rest and recharge. See, and that's why the best producers make one film every 3 years.
Yeah, because they know to go, and they can allot their time. They make money last. You know what I mean? Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
And so for me, I have never had content at that level. I make my own content. I've watched other people. I've refined my process. A perfect example, when I started this podcast about 2 years ago, like I said at the start, I literally came in with a topic and I didn't know what I was going to say when I hit, bang, we're live. I had no idea. And for me, at some point, I'm like, my conversations are wandering. The guests seem uninterested. I can't see.
You got in your head.
Right. And I'm like, so what do I need? I need structure. Okay. What's something I can do to add structure that is free and that is easy to use and that I can send to the person that I'm going to be talking to? Oh, what if I just made like a short little document that here's what we're going to do. Here's the date. Here's the time. Here's some talking points. What if I did that? Wow.
Yeah.
Holy crap. And since I've been doing that, I feel better about my podcast.
You feel more professional, don't you?
I feel a ton more professional. I have a structure. I put it together. It's about a page. I don't get too in depth. I want it to feel like
organic.
I want it to feel organic, but I don't want to. I want it to go in a straight line like this, not like this. Yeah. And so I want it to go in a wide enough straight line that from start to finish, there is a narrative. Like any story, you have a beginning, you have a middle, and you have an end. And it's just like any good story. We start someplace, we grow, we learn, and we come down, and we're like, okay, what did we just do? Why did we just do it? And so.
Do you listen to NPR?
I do sometimes, yes.
Yes, you sound like someone that listens to NPR because I listen to NPR all the time. This American Life was I listened to This American Life every single week when I was in Toronto.
Really? See, so here's the funny part of that. I used to drive everywhere so I spent 20 years as a fast pitch
umpire.
Fast pitch softball umpire. So I have literally driven all over this country, going from tournament to tournament, to game, and so I had a subscription to
satellite.
Sirius. Yeah, so
Sirius,
I had a subscription to Sirius, and when you're driving at 4 a.m. to get somewhere, there's not a lot on
no
except
on the
for
radio.
Oh, I don't know, NPR. And
NPR's always on.
NPR's always on. So I end up driving and listening to this person talking very quietly.
Ira Glass, you sound like Ira Glass. Hello, listeners. Welcome to NPR. My name is Ira Glass.
But I mean, for me, I've listened to a lot of radio, and so the way that I made my podcast, I have an intro song that plays. I have an announcer.
I love it.
Yeah, and so it feels to me like it's a radio show for 45 minutes, and that's the way I wanted it to sound. And
me too, exactly. I love that we're on the same level with that. That's exactly what I did too.
Right, yeah. And so I watched some of these other podcasts of these people, and it's literally they hit
so disorganized,
and you're like, who is this person? Why should I?
What am I listening to?
Yeah, who the hell is this guy? Yeah, right. And for me, in the end, I mean, yes, I want people to watch my stuff, listen, comment, share, that whole thing, but I want to feel like I made something good. I want to feel.
You want to be proud of it.
Yes, I want to say this is my podcast versus this is my podcast.
This is the thing I made.
This
you
is
like
the thing.
it?
This is my thing. Yeah,
I did it.
Yeah, and so for I think this is one of the main reasons that the two of us connect. We have the same vibe of we're thinking, how do I need a structure. I don't want like a hard structure, but I need enough of a structure to get me going in a direction.
That structure to me, what that does, it feels like my own gold star that I've done. Like recording is easy for me. Having this conversation is easy for me. Absolutely. But it's the prep that will go into it to make that conversation easy that I need to know that I've executed so that I can go into that conversation as chill as I can, because I know all these things have to happen to make it the standard that I want.
And see, that for me speaks directly back to my 20 years as an umpire. I spent hours reading the rule book. I spent hours looking at plays. I spent hours
research.
Exactly. And that way, when I got on the field, I had literally thought of every possible permutation of a play that I could possibly come up with. Yeah. And I played it over my head because I obsess about crap I will literally be shaving my face in the morning and thinking of the same play in my head that happened 5 years ago. And I'm thinking, I totally messed that up. Or, I got that right because it's funny because at this point, at my age, I think that people think this comes naturally to me. It's like, no, do you not know that I stutter? I am literally scared 5 seconds before I hit live or before I hit record. I am literally like, okay, breathing exercises. Make sure you breathe more often than you should. And I think that what people perceive as off the cuff, what people perceive as being improv is actually me playing a script over and over in my head 90 times. If the person says some variation of X, I'm going to say Y.
Yep.
And for you, you know, you have that experience in the film industry. You have that experience of, hey, you know, we work 16-hour days because we had an X starting date and a Y end date, because on Y, we don't have any more money. The money's gone.
That's
the money's gone. The money's gone on this day. And once it's gone, I'm out of a job. Right.
Well, part of my high standard and my perfectionism is I think I'm a bit of an intellectual masochist. So I'll remember if I screwed something up in my own production schedule.
Right.
What I have is like, okay, so like long story short, I work with a lot of not so great men in the film industry.
Right.
And this was pre-Harvey Weinstein too. So there was a lot of stuff that was happening that was not cool.
Yep.
So when I moved home, I was also like recovering from that environment where it was like, oh my God, but I moved home the year after Me Too. So it was like, okay, I'm being seen. It's fine.
Okay.
And I went through things that were similar to those stories. And that's why it was so crazy when Me Too took off. But I want to make a special note that the men that were in the fundament that are incredibly respectful, they see us as equals. They have T on the roster of admins. And I think of men like you. I think of men like J-Man and Haterade and my buddy Obi that I'm sure you've hung out with, where these are men that respect women. They respect their rights. They understand the contribution they make. Yeah. And that has helped me heal from that environment. Honestly, knowing these men for 2 years, it has. But the main reason I was bringing this up was the first man that ever respected me in the industry was the very last producer I worked with. Right. And you don't know the impact you could have on somebody until like years later, probably. Right. But I was 26 and I was like, I didn't know this was going to be my last job, but like, it was a really important show for me. I was working for PBS and Nat Geo. And this was a producer that clearly saw potential in me. He respected me. He never, ever once acknowledged my looks. He never once assumed something because of who I am, because of how young I am, all of these things. He expected a job done, and if it was done right, he acknowledged that and celebrated that. If it was done wrong, he acknowledged that and helped me correct it. Never once did I feel disrespected, and that helped me trust men again. Wow. Because I was seen as an equal for the first time in my life, and I didn't even know that. So just talking about, I guess the point of this was that, like, you know, like, working with that producer and working on my own stuff now, I have his like, I don't know, like, I'm sure he was filled a father figure void in my life, but like, it was just like, you know, you could do better at that. I have that in my head now, and I'm almost 30. And the last time I saw this person, I was 25. And like, I know when I can do better, and that voice of influence is always in my mind. So that prep schedule has to be perfect, because that one time I screwed up, that memory of him yelling at me, not really yelling at me, but like disappointed in me, stays with me. So my standard has to be high because I'm an intellectual masochist.
Okay. Speaking of standards, so as you have grown as a creator from your very first video, your very first stream, your very first whatever to now, have you saved some of your older work? Knowing
Twitch has saved it for me.
Okay, but my question is, have you saved it knowing this is a pile of garbage? But but you hold on to it because you're like, I always want to know the benchmark of where I was then and where I am now. I still have the very first blog post I wrote back in 2014 on LinkedIn.
Interesting.
It looks like an English paper. It's not a blog post.
It's so intellectual. It's not engaging with an audience at all. It's just like, here's my dissertation.
Yeah,
like,
it's like I wrote an English paper, and I purposely hang on to it. I purposely keep it on my profile simply because I want to look at that and go, that was a gigantic pile of crap. But
was it a pile of crap in one context? I think it's really important you change that vernacular to to acknowledge that you are very good at academic writing.
Right. But I was bringing skills from a different spot to this spot.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember writing that, going, this might suck, but I will regret it more by not publishing it. I will have more regrets not publishing it than actually publishing it. And it's like, okay, for me, it was like I had to do it at that point in my life. So I'm like, I need a switch. I need to shift. I need to do something new with myself. And I'm like, I can write. That's a good place to start. Okay, so let's find a place that I can write. Let's find a subject that I can write about 1,000 words on, and let's just start there, because
just go for it
and just start and I think that barrier is very strong for a lot of people, is that they want to turn themselves into Jornator Jake. They want to turn themselves into these other creators that they see on Twitch that do this stuff. Like, they're like, I can play the game. I can do exactly what that guy does. Why?
It's quite ignorant and arrogant, that mindset, I think.
Okay. So, right. But for some people, they just can't hit the word go. They can't be like, I'm going to put this out. And they have this fear of whatever. Perhaps it's a fear of rejection, a fear of not being enough, for whatever. But
content creation brings out all kinds of childhood trauma feelings.
Dude, the
problem is when you're not aware of them, that's when the depression hits.
Exactly. I think that whenever you become creative, you are forced to face yourself. You're forced to
be vulnerable.
Yes, and some people do not have the mental strength to be vulnerable. And
in the way that content creation in that present moment in their lives would need them to be. Because I always like to say there's always potential. People can change.
Yes. I completely agree. Agree. But I think that people don't want to be seen as vulnerable in front of other people.
They don't want to be seen, period.
I think people want to be seen, but they want to be seen in their own
narrative.
Exactly. And so... for a lot of people, they think their content is them, and I'm like, no. Once you put it out, it isn't yours anymore. It's everybody else's. It is everybody. Once you hit publish, it becomes everybody else's.
Yeah,
and it is no longer yours. And that is a line that a lot of people cannot cross.
You mean like separating themselves and their identity from a piece they posted?
Yes.
Oh.
So
I think it's interesting.
See, I did not think that this podcast would go to this direction, but that's fine, because
that's the funnest part about organic content like this, is there's always the forks in the road that you cross and you follow. Did you want me to speak about that a little bit?
Go for it. Do it.
Can you say the last thing you said? Just my brain is very floaty. I remember there was a thing I wanted to say. Now I can't remember.
I said in a very long-winded way, because that's what I do. There is a line that people cannot push themselves over. They identify
to execute.
Yes, and so they identify themselves with their content, not realizing the minute you hit publish or post, it no longer your piece of content does not belong to you. It belongs to everybody else.
Well, and you think about, like I mentioned Jean-Michel Basquiat earlier, but you think about his works of art. Are you familiar with him? You probably know, like, his.
Okay.
He's basically just like an artist from, like, I think he was in the 60s or something. Like, he was in the Andy Warhol genre of artist.
Okay.
And you think about, like, his art is not traditional art. It's quite abstract, and it's like really bizarre. Like, it's just like symbols and basically whatever he was feeling and thinking, and he just threw them all together. And maybe he was in the 80s. I think he dated Madonna at one point. Anyway, not important. I just wanted to make sure the timeline was correct. I was like, hold on a second. He dated Madonna. That's important.
Yeah, it is. I agree.
Yeah, right. But you think about that, and like, I think about his works, and I'm like, it really makes a lot of people feel things. And I think exactly like what you said, where like you put a piece of art out there, whether it's on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, in a gallery, that's art, right? And I think the problem is if you don't want to press publish or go live, there's something in you that says there's something wrong. And that doesn't mean that your art is wrong. That means there's something inside you that isn't aligning with it.
Right.
It might not be done. You might not feel prepared. There's so many better avenues. If you're going live because you feel compelled to, and I've done that. I've did this many times especially in the first 6 months of streaming. I felt compelled to go live because I wasn't bringing in an income for my partner and I. So that was the closest thing I had to trying to do that. But my heart and my passion was not in it to do it authentically. So it was a huge learning curve for me to understand what I wanted to contribute and what I wanted to build in the online realm. So there was a lot of content that I put out there just because I felt like I had to put it out there. Right. But that's kind of why it's hard for me to go back and look at my old stuff, because I wasn't present. And that's why I felt not icky, but I felt like it's like doing homework that you don't like. It's like, I don't want to do it. But, there's a lot of amazing memories and friends I made from those streams and that content. But the first authentic piece of content I felt I aligned with was my podcast I made 2 years ago, because it was something that was mine. I liked that idea. I wanted to follow it and do it. And then I got more and more confident with Instagram and YouTube. And that if you are hesitant to putting a piece out there, you need to stop. Don't put it out there, because it's also very important you look at, why don't you want to put it out there? That's important to ask yourself questions about, am I feeling insecure about this? Why am I feeling insecure about this? Is it reminding me of a parent that hurt me? Is it reminding me of someone that betrayed me? And I'm uncomfortable with being vulnerable. And there's the root there. Are you scared of being vulnerable? But the best part about that, you put a piece out there that makes you feel really vulnerable, is guess what? Someone else at the same time in the world that you're posting that is also feeling that same amount of vulnerability. And now you might have made a really cool new friend, or someone might really dig your content because you're aligning with someone else that's feeling that way. And that's all that content is about, is connection. Any kind of content.
And that quote right there will be the one that I pull from this podcast to put on Twitter, because it is the best possible way to end this great conversation.
I love it.
I am grateful that you made time for me, Mecca. I hope that we can find time that our schedules will cross. We can end up and the same fire team soon. I really do.
No worries, my friend.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. This part of the podcast is done. We're going to drop over to GBIRL Raw here shortly.
All right.
We're going to get into a topic for about 20, 30 minutes. We're going to rant at each other and swear on, and the only place you will find GBIRL Raw is on GBIRL.com. This podcast will go on YouTube first. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Please do like, share, subscribe. I appreciate it all. I am loving the comments and I'm loving the views. Thank you very much for being here, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you for tuning in today. You can find links to everyone on the show in the description below. Check out Bill the Conqueror on Twitch and Twitter to stay up to date on his thoughts and ideas about gaming culture.